Hi there, traders. Just a quick update as we come out of that North American session, heading into the Asian session. Now, US retail sales figures were slightly weaker, right? They weren't really like crazy weak, but they were enough to really sort of, as I said, like slowly turn the Fed's view on interest rates. And we are starting to see this on the news wires. There's an article here, Fed officials steer cautiously toward potential rate cuts. Now, I was saying yesterday that the Fed, it looked like they'd predetermined their comments before the US CPI numbers came out, right? So, and it's like, you know what, we're on hold, but the numbers are already weaker. Unemployment's weaker, CPI is weaker. And now we're starting to see, yesterday, US retail sales weaker. The poll was for 0.3, came out at 0.1. Which is right on the minimum edge of the range. And same with even the X autos number there. Now, one thing that did sort of blow this out, and it sort of distorts it a bit, these capacity utilization and manufacturing output numbers were stronger, right? So that took a little bit of, what I would call the shine off the retail sales figures, which are weaker, right? So that sees the dollar go down. Whereas the industrial production numbers just sort of stabilize things for the opportunity. Otherwise, you know what, if these numbers have been weak or weren't even coming out, I think we would have seen a more sustained move across the majors, right? I had a order sort of ready to go there on Euro, looking to get into the trade as soon as the release. Now, that was sort of sitting around, if I just blow this up a bit, around 17 when the numbers came out, right? It was already sort of leaning on or just through this support level. And then the numbers came out and it started to sort of go up. It went up about 10 or 15, over the course of like a minute. It was really slow to get going. So I had Gorilla Trader set and it didn't actually execute because the order got canceled because it wasn't moving enough. And that's because of those industrial production numbers, right? Now, we come into the charts, we are starting to see, this is where you've got to really start to tune in because we are starting to see technical build up, okay, pressure build up. You can see here on Euro, a little bit of a tweak to the downside, a little bit of a tweak to the upside. We are waiting for, the penny to drop with Euro, right? We know there's a geopolitical situation there as far as the French election goes. But to me, all signs lead to a weaker dollar. Okay, so dollar Swiss still heading lower, dollar yen, well, it's just doing its own thing with the carry trade. Finally seeing dollar CAD start to move to the downside. And I've got to say, just be careful with this because just coming into that, right, I was looking at this yesterday, just as I was doing a sort of live training session there. And I'm like, you know what, this is a bit oversold. It was the only thing holding me back from going short. By the time I finished the live training session, I'll just blow this up a little bit. It was quite interesting because I was like, oh, maybe I've already missed it because it was already sort of drifting down here. And then within an hour, I checked the markets just to see what was going on, and it was back up at 137.30. So it looked like the market traders just pushing for a few stop losses, but this is the saving grace of stochastics, right? You can see it's overdone. So that stopped me sort of placing a trade, trying to go short, and then it sort of bounces all the way up to 137 sort of 55, right? You'd be really disappointed had you got short there on that earlier move. So keep an eye on your stochastics as we go forward. You can see when dollar CAD was up the top here, it was overdone. So we are sort of heading down here. This previous support trend line is now acting as resistance, and with oil moving or going up in value, I should say. It's up at 81 bucks now. That's going to put downward pressure on dollar CAD. And that goes with, this is what I'm trying to sort of convey, goes with the sort of slightly weaker sentiment we are seeing in the dollar at the moment. So as we go into the Asian session here, there's no major data to come out, but just be aware that I think the wheels are turning, and we are starting to see a bit more consistency with the weaker numbers. Okay, retail sales. I know industrial production, and that sort of says things are still moving along, but the numbers that connect to inflation and employment, retail sales is a massive connector, right? That's weaker. I'm telling you, I think the dollar is turning, and we just have to wait and be patient for it to sort of kick in. Sorry, just one last thing, just as we go into that Asia session, the Aussie a little bit higher, the RBA being very pig-headed about rates, saying we know it's crushing everyone, the higher interest rates, but we've got to get inflation under control, right? So they were sort of talking about they may have even raised rates, which is why the Aussie dollar is higher. So just factor that in. But one of the core things about the Aussie inflation numbers is inflation is going up or being held up by rent, mortgages, fuel costs, food costs, banking and insurance. They're the main contributors, which are things we need. So you can't like stop people spending on that. So they got their hands full. I'm waiting for the central banks to come out and start talking about this problem, because old school economics doesn't work in this new world. Ever since the global financial crisis, 07, 08, 09, there's so much money in the markets. We've had the pandemic, there's money in, they've raised interest rates. Now they're crushing everyone based off old principles. So what do I think with the Aussie? Well, I'm not sure, but the markets are moving around interest rate differentials. Aussie being rates higher for longer. You're going to see the Aussie go up against a bunch of crosses here over the short term. And I think with the dollar, it's about to sort of turn, but just be patient. As I said, just coming into that Asian session, just to give you a look at the calendar, there's not too much to sort of to jump on, right? You got the RBNZ offshore holdings, nothing big. The key to the next sort of major opportunity will come from the UK CPI numbers, and we will be running a live trading session on that. So make sure you join in if you have time, or you can watch the recording afterwards. The key numbers here, Reuters poll, okay, 2%. And there's a few things wrong, as we know, over the last month or two with regards how the UK do their numbers. But they were talking about getting inflation back to 2%. I mean, we're almost there, right? And then you'd think they'd be ready to cut rates, but it doesn't appear so at this stage. But we'll be focusing on this very closely. I'll give you another update as we head into that European session. All right, guys, have a good one. All the best. Cheerio.